What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be talking about the 2016 Season 1 update for iRacing. As usual, you can find a full changelog down in the description. Not going to talk about everything, and we will talk about the content at the end of this video rather than at the front of it. So, anyways, let us begin. I guess the best place to begin is what is probably going to define this update, what is probably going to be most memorable about this update besides the content, and that is the downtime. iRacing was trying to replace their back-end structure more or less in preparation for a major update that they're doing to the member site that they've talked about before, and I guess things just went horribly wrong, nothing worked, and all their testing was basically ruined more or less. It worked fine, but then when they actually tried to go live, it didn't work fine, and basically the website was offline for 2.5 days and has some serious stability issues still, which is why I haven't necessarily tested out everything as much as I usually like to do when I make these videos, but I figure like at this point we've kind of waited long enough and it's time to get this one out the door. So yeah, I'm not sure what that means to us as users besides the stability issues. If anything from the changelog didn't quite actually end up making it, or if there were separate issues, or if that pushes off the member site update even further. But you know, honestly, in my 7 years of being at iRacing, I've never seen an update that was this problematic at all. So this is definitely new uncharted territory. If you're a new iRacing member, this is not the normal standard quarterly update procedure. Generally does not go this way. So that's that. Let's move on. So let us begin with the things that have actually changed, and we're going to start off with the dynamic track system, which also ties into the popcorn effects particle system. First of all, for the dynamic track system, this is something implemented in the previous update. However, it's been slightly improved for this season. Now it's actually calculated in real time, so a car in front of you can actually clear the marbles off in front of you, and you can drive right through his tire tracks marble free essentially, or at least with reduced amount of marbles, which is pretty cool. I don't think it's necessarily a huge difference, but it's something that, I mean, hey, this is awesome. I mean, why not? However, the real change with the dynamic track system is that debris will now collect on tires, such as grass, dirt, gravel, as well as marbles, as it did previously. You won't see this visually on your tires yet. This is apparently something that just missed this update. We've seen previews of this several months ago, actually, accidentally, I should add, but you will now actually feel a diminished level of grip if your tires are dirty, so go ahead and make sure you clean them off, because that does have an effect. Sort of tied into the dynamic track system, not a part of it, however, it kind of is, it's certainly linked, is the new popcorn effects system, which sadly is not tied into iRacing form usage. Dang. Anyways, this is the new particle system that is available in iRacing, which is being used to draw things like sparks that can actually collide with vehicle bodies, which that just sounds really cool, although quite pointless, but really cool, as well as new backfires. The McLaren 12C GT3 is twice as flamethrower-rific as it was previously, I will assure you of that. New smoke effects, which are more dense, making burnouts look more awesome. Thumbs up on that one. Maybe I'll get to do some of those this season, hopefully. As well as grass being kicked up, gravel being kicked up, dirt being kicked up, and things like that. Oh yeah, there's also the fact that marbles will now actually be drawn flying off of the cars around you into your car as well, which isn't really that big of a feature, isn't really that important, but it's just really cool seeing a little chunk of rubber fall off of a car and just go flying around, and then you're just sitting there thinking, somebody's going to have to pick that up, the whole dynamic track system. That's why I say it ties in together. That's just cool. I mean, seriously, if you're a fan of simulation, things like that should just make you go, yeah, that's awesome. Whereas everybody else is thinking, sweet, so a little couple of black pixels fell off of a car in front of you. I don't get it. Seriously, you have to be crazy to get these things. Alongside the updated popcorn FX system, there are some sounds that will actually now relay when you are driving through things like the marbles, as well as the dirt, the gravel, and things like that. So you'll actually have more information rather than just how much grip you think you may or may not have. seeing how we still don't really have visual tire pickup. I'm seriously not sure if I'm overplaying the significance of these updates that I just talked about, or if I'm not, but these are things that are just cool, okay? I can't say anything more than that, anything less than that. There are things that exist now, and I find them interesting. You may not. So yeah, let's get on to the things that actually matter more. While we're still kind of on the subject of audio loosely, basically every single car in iRacing has some updated sounds in one form or another, and these are mostly new tire sounds, which I will say this, I don't think they sound as good as the previous version of the tire sounds did. These do kind of sound like a paper cup being dragged across the desk a little bit. Just throwing that one out there. But they are about 10,000 times more useful and usable and informative than what was previously in iRacing, which is why I think this is actually probably my favorite part of the update. Even though the sounds themselves aren't particularly great, they're so much more useful, so much better, that I just have to say thumbs up on that one, because it's definitely a step in the right direction. Moving on, another smaller little feature, although certainly an important feature when it becomes an important feature, is the ability to now have shared pit stalls on several circuits, meaning that you can cram 60 drivers into one single session when otherwise there wouldn't be enough pit stalls. There are some strings attached, and how this works, you can find that down in the description in the changelog itself, because it just takes me way too much time to go ahead and explain what happens in all the different circumstances. But that's definitely a nice feature, especially for those interested in endurance racing. Moving on to the physics. First of all, there's the mysterious zero pressure tire stiffness calculation improvement. This is basically an improved way that they're calculating the stiffness of a tire before it's actually put to use, but it does affect what happens to the tire when it is put to use. Yeah, apparently it's more realistic. It's not necessarily a huge change. You will need to change your tire pressures to suit this update, but in terms of driving dynamics and things like that, I can't say it's really all that substantial until maybe you get a little bit too sideways. Seems to help out there, but it could just be a placebo effect. The Star Mazda has seemingly had some aerodynamic work done to it, so you're probably going to want to start from scratch on that front. The Dallara DW12 IndyCar has now had the version 6 tire model applied to it, as well as a new differential put into the back of the thing. And I'll say this, as someone who spent most of my time actually testing that car out, having a blast with that car. Might run it a bit more this season because it is more fun to drive on road courses, actually. It's kind of like a mixture between what the car was previously and the 2011 Indy car that's available in the Dallara Dash series. So if you have that car and you're interested in running it, make sure you test it out. Tire temperatures, much less sensitive now, by the way, which is a big issue before on that car. And then the stock cars, many of them have had chassis torsion applied to them, which in some cases doesn't really amount to much. Some cars it's a little bit more significant. It's one of those things that you're going to need to test out to see what the effect is on that, but pretty much all of the oval cars have it now. And while we are kind of talking about stock cars, it's also worth noting, unreleased, unmentioned object in the build update, the Ford stock cars now have different sounds that are from a Ford engine, I guess. Personally, I don't particularly like them, but hey, they're different. Gives a little bit of diversity. It gives you a reason to select a different car other than a Ford. So thumbs up on that one. So let's go ahead and move away from the updates and onto the content side of things. There are 4 pieces of content with this update. It's pretty heavy on that side of things. But first of all, you have Southern National Motorsports Park, which is a 4/10 of a mile short track oval, which I'm just going to go ahead and say this, no matter what, this track was always going to be overlooked entirely because of what it happened to be released alongside. And this video will carry on that theme of overlooking Southern National Motorsports Park because of what it was released alongside. So first off, you have the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. It's available with all the different configurations available there. The Nürburgring Nordschleife, which is its separate circuit that you would also have to purchase. If you purchase the GP circuit as well as the Nordschleife, you can combine them into one giant super circuit. Similar to what you see in the VLN series with multiple configurations for the GP circuit there. And I will say, as usual, it's an iRacing track, top quality, looks fantastic for this engine, fantastic texturing, accuracy, and all those sorts of things. This is all standard par for the course for iRacing. Although I will say, if somebody would have told me that the Nürburgring would ever actually end up in iRacing, I would have probably laughed at them 7 years ago when I first started racing there. And it's still kind of hard to believe because it seemingly happened so quick, where this track went from being an iRacing meme to now actually being a thing that you can drive on. It's just baffling. I didn't have nearly the same reaction to the same track in the Assetto Corsa, I will say. As for the track accuracy and how it performs and everything, performance does seem to be an issue with the Grand Prix circuit in terms of the layout and the accuracy and how it compares to the Assetto Corsa version of those two tracks. Obviously, the Grand Prix circuit in iRacing is significantly miles better than what Assetto Corsa has for that circuit. However, the Nordschleife is pretty much one and the same. It's just whatever one you prefer graphically. Personally, I think the iRacing version looks better, but I also prefer the iRacing graphics over the Assetto Corsa graphics because they do tend to be a little bit sharper, crisper, and more natural looking to my eyeballs. But hey, you can't go wrong. They drive exactly the same. I mean, you know, you would really have to go crazy to spot any sort of inaccuracies and differences between the two in terms of the track itself. Maybe trackside objects, but having never been there, sadly enough, I can't really tell you too terribly much on what each one is missing specifically. Besides the 3 new tracks, there is also one new car, and that is the McLaren MP430, McLaren's 2015 Honda-powered Formula 1 car. Because I know people are going to do it, go ahead and make your, you know, having to push the car, the engine is junk, you know, GP2 engine, Formula 1 chassis. Oh, that's why the iRacing service was down for 2.5 days with this update, because the McLaren blew up again. Insert your pictures of Fernando dreaming about places where he wishes he was, and all sorts of things like that, because, like I said, apparently people still haven't gotten tired of that. But anyways, although I will say this, it is worth noting that iRacing has said multiple times that McLaren's actually been really helpful with building the car and supplying them with data. So maybe it could actually be one of those things where the Honda power unit being so bad in 2015 was actually a blessing in disguise, because McLaren's more willing to fork over data that they otherwise wouldn't if they were running in Mercedes position, curb stomping the field. I don't know. That could just be marketing speak. However, I do know that it is really cool that there is a, you know, current rules era Formula 1 car built by one of the big name, you know, constructors in Formula 1 within iRacing. I mean, seriously, that's just a cool thing for sim racing, regardless of what sim you are a fan of. And before I even get into driving this car, I just have to mention that they not just simulated the car itself in some sort of preset condition, they've also simulated the systems and left that in your control as you would expect on a Formula 1 car. You have all those different settings available for you to tweak, the MGU, the ERS, the DRS, fuel mixture, fuel mapping, all of that is available. The differential settings are available, adjustable in car and everything like that, so you can be fidgeting and playing around with the car while you're trying to drive around the circuit and do all that sort of thing. And seriously, that is a next level simulation compared to what anyone else out there in sim racing is doing. Yes, I understand that makes me sound like a massive fanboy. However, in my opinion, stuff like that is incredibly critical when you're starting to talk about cars like this, where systems are so much a part of it as well. As for driving this car, let me just go ahead and say I'm not a huge fan of driving F1 cars in sims. It's just never really been my thing, so consider the source. But I have to say, this car is actually surprisingly good. It actually makes me think that, hey, this is what it might be like to drive an F1 car, you know, as opposed to the previously available FW31 in iRacing, which just always felt like the car was going to explode as soon as you got to the corner, and it's just going to suddenly lose grip in an instant, and you had no chance at all. This thing actually seems to behave in a reasonable fashion. You do have to be pretty careful getting on the power, which, as you would expect with all these, you know, hybrid systems and turbo, you know, you have a bit more torque than what you did in the FW31, for example. You know, you do have to be more careful in that regard. However, the car itself is more stable. It feels like a more developed car itself. And actually, it's surprisingly good, and it seems like the initial reaction has been pretty positive. And I'll even say this, hey, it's actually possible to leave the grid smoking the tires, leaving 11s behind you, and not blow up, which is something that doesn't often happen in iRacing, so that's got to mean something. I will say, though, the indetermining factor for me on that is I actually kind of want to get into a race with this car, whereas the FW31 that was available in iRacing and pretty much any other F1 car in any other simulation anyways, I never really have any urge to race or any drive to race at all. I actually kind of wanted to get into a race with this thing just to see what it's going to race like and just to see how much fun it's going to be. So maybe I'll actually go ahead and race this F1 car. I don't know, I wasn't really expecting to, but it's actually surprisingly good. Now, of course, it does come with the iRacing issues, and that is there's no different tire compounds available, which is something that they are working on and something that should be happening, relatively soonish, not to abuse that joke right there, as well as the fact that the tire temperatures still have the sensitivity to heat that is known about and is an issue and causes some issues every now and then, particularly when you start to get sideways. However, this car is still correctable when you do get into that type of condition. And I will say this, it's even more correctable than pretty much any other car out there within iRacing. It's actually kind of fun to drive. I can't wait to see what actually happens though when the season actually starts and people start developing more aggressive competitive setups, if that absolutely destroys all sorts of balance that the car once had. Although, again, this car's already like 10,000% better than the FW31 ever was and ever could be, so it's got that going for it. Anyways, that's the 2016 Season 1 update for iRacing. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.